Welcome to Outbound Labs by Predictable Revenue, where we share the results of our prospecting experiments, what we learned along the way, and what it means for your team.
Hey everybody, I'm Colin and this is Lavinia, and we're part of the Outbound Labs team here at Predictable Revenue. Today we're talking more about deliverability and specifically about the send volume and how much volume impacts our deliverability and whether or not we can sort of play with that, or if there's a certain cutoff, if you got to keep it below a certain number, or it doesn't really matter. And so the reason why we attack this is basically, for as long as I can remember, there have always been these hypothetical limits of how many emails you could send. And I remember, back in the 5-6 years ago, we looked at Gmail and they had this hypothetical limit of 2,000 emails. And you're like, great. I can send so many emails, and this is back in the day when it didn't really matter. You could send a ton of emails, you get a 5-10% response rate because it was new and novel. Well, those days are definitely gone. And so what we wanted to look at is, well, how much can you really send? How much should you be sending? And does it have an impact on whether or not your emails are making it into your prospects' inboxes? Because whether you like it or not, we're all living in this world now, and I think a lot of people, a lot of teams that we run into don't really realize, or don't always realize that when you send a prospecting email, sometimes it makes it into your prospects inbox, and sometimes it doesn't. And whether or not it does or does not depends on the things that we do. Whether it's sending emails, whether it's sending good content, whether it's the way we manage our lists and all that. And so today we're really talking about the threshold. So I remember in the early days with Gmail, you had to, when you're if you're setting up a new domain, you had to make sure you prepaid a certain amount of money, and then you had to keep it below this. And there was all these theories on how long you needed to ramp the domain and how many emails you could send. And so this is one of the things that we wanted to test was there a cutoff threshold, and how does that impact the lifetime of the domain? And basically what we're looking for is we're creating a fresh domain. We're not experimenting with the way that we're ramping a new domain, and Livin, you can get into that a little bit. But what we're just looking for is if we're sending a targeted but non-personalized email campaign, how long will it take before somebody flags us as spam? So Lavinia, talk to me about the experiment.
Sure thing. So in the nature of Outbound Labs, we wanted to try the send volume side of things and see if there really was a cutoff point that had a major impact on when the domain started being flagged as spam. So to do this, as usual, we picked a handful of clients and we ran the experiment across each of these clients. And the way we set this up, we set up 3 campaigns. So one campaign was set to send 5 initials a day. The next campaign was set to send 30 initials a day. And the third campaign was set to send 50 initials a day. So we had
initials a day, that's like your first email.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
So then when we had those set up, we wanted to make sure that everything else apart from the send volume remained the same. So we had exactly the same messaging, exactly the same list of contacts we split into 3 and shared between the campaigns. We had exactly the same wait time between the initials and each of the follow-ups. So we basically tried to keep everything else the same as much as we could, so that when we got to those end results, we felt that it was that variable of send volume that was giving us the results. So we set it up, started running, and let each of the campaigns run for about a month. After a month, we went back and looked at the domain that was associated with each of these different campaigns. And after analyzing them, seeing how much time it took for each to go to spam and across the different clients, we found that overall this was a campaign where actually there was no difference in the time it took to hit spam, whether you were sending 5 initials a day or 50 initials a day. So there was no difference, which is quite surprising, because I feel like, as Colin was saying, volume is it's a big one when it comes to being flagged as spam. Don't send a high volume, then you're going to be safer. Well, in this case, we found that definitely didn't happen.
And I just want to throw the caveat in there. This is 50 initials. We've got how many? 3 to 5 follow-ups going out.
Yep.
So the moral of the story is not you can send 1,000 emails a day and get away with it. The moral of the story is between sending 5 a day, really, what does that work out to? 25 a day or 30 or 50, 150 a day. There wasn't any sort of incremental on a brand new domain that hadn't been warmed up. So the implications are not exactly the same for for you that's listening, if you're prospecting off of your company's main domain, there's a lot more that goes into the domain reputation. We're using fresh domains because it's the only way to sort of isolate another variable, right? If we're using our own domain and our customers' domains, our email traffic habits are going to look dramatically different. And it's really like when you're looking at deliverability, it comes down to engagement. And so if one domain has one sort of company gets a lot more positive engagement for one reason or another versus another, it's just a variable we can't control for. So this is one of the reasons why we probably should have introduced this earlier in the but anyway, that's one of the reasons why we're using these naked or brand new domains for the purposes of these tests. So again, we're not coming and saying, hey, you can send 1,000 or 2,000 emails a day. It comes down to quality, but what we did find is that there was no difference. And how long did it take the domain to hit before it got flagged as spam?
Well, that was the interesting part. So we found that across all of the experiments, across all of the clients for all of the domains, it took exactly the same amount of time for each of them to hit spam. So this made us think that there must be something else to it. So it's not volume, but potentially the length of that email cadence. It was the same time through the email cadence that they all hit spam. So that got us thinking, let's try shorter email cadences and test them out. So we're not worried about volume as much, we're more worried about the length of the cadences. So we currently have a handful of campaigns running that are going out with only one initial and no follow-ups, one initial and 2 follow-ups, and one initial and 4 follow-ups. And we're going to keep an eye on those, see if that makes a difference, and then we might be onto something else there.
Cool. So if you want to find out the results of those experiments, this should be coming up in about a month or so. I think we're actively testing those.
We are, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, stay tuned. And the best way to stay tuned is to check out our subscribe on LinkedIn. There's a little button down somewhere down here, and a little bell icon. It's up here now? It's over here?
Down there.
But they can put the buttons all over the screen, so I never really know. So just hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell notification, and you'll make sure you get notified next time we post these, because we're going to just post them randomly just to confuse you and make it very difficult. So make sure you subscribe and make your life a little bit easier. All right, thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.